Welcome to Energy GHK, living in biological harmony, where symptoms are explored as intelligent biological responses, not mistakes. Join us for grounded conversations on Germanic Healing Knowledge. The first biological law gives us the starting point. It teaches that every meaningful biological program begins with a conflict shock, not just ordinary daily stress, and not simply having a hard week, but a moment that feels unexpected, acute, and emotionally overwhelming. It catches you off guard. It's something that hits you in a very personal way, and often in a way that feels isolating, where you can't stop thinking about it. You keep replaying it over and over in your mind, and you wake up at 3 a.m. because you need more time to resolve it. That moment might be a breakup, some betrayal. It might be hearing something humiliating or painful. It may be a divorce, a loss, an argument, bad news, or something that made you suddenly feel rejected, frightened, not good enough, separated, or unable to digest what just happened. And in that moment, the psyche, the brain, and the organ respond simultaneously. That instantaneous snapshot of the shock experienced by all your senses. This is the foundation. I touched on this in the previous episode, so I do not want to stay here too long today, but I do want to remind you of one important thing. It is not only the event itself that matters, it's how the event was experienced by the person. It's how we perceive it. Two people can go through the same situation and have completely different biological responses, because it's the perception that shapes the conflict. What one person can brush off, another person may experience as devastating. The body is always responding to what was lived and felt in that moment. For instance, if two different women find out their husband is cheating, one might not be bothered if she's wanting to separate, and so she won't experience a conflict. However, the other might with a sexual conflict, since she can no longer reproduce without a man, which can impact her reproductive organs. Or if her partner is torn from her breast, and she may run the breast program because she has experienced a nest worry conflict. This is what brings us to the second biological law, because once the conflict shock happens, the body does not just produce symptoms without meaning. It follows a very precise two-phase process. This is one of the most important things to understand in all of Germanic healing knowledge. The second biological law explains that every biological program, as long as the conflict is resolved, unfolds in two phases. The first phase is the conflict active phase. The second phase is the healing phase, and between the two, there is a conflict resolution known as the epicrisis. This changes everything because it means that many of the symptoms people fear most are actually happening after the conflict has been resolved, not during the height of the stress. And this is such an important shift to understand. During the conflict active phase, the person is in a sympathetic state. This is the daytime phase. They're stressed. They're preoccupied. They cannot stop thinking about what happened. Their mind keeps circling around the conflict. Sleep is often affected. Appetite may drop. Their hands and feet may feel cold, and they may feel tense, wired, restless, anxious, or mentally consumed by the issue. They're not at ease because biologically the system is in survival mode. In the modern world, most people don't even realize they are conflict active because they're so busy, they're so distracted. However, insomnia and cold extremities are the telltale signs to pay attention. This is the phase where the body is adapting to help the person cope with the unresolved conflict. So depending on the tissue involved, the body may respond in different ways. Some tissues lose cells, such as the bones in a self-devaluation conflict. This shows up as weakness in the body when someone does not feel good about themselves. Some tissues grow extra cells, such as the certain digestive tissues, when someone experiences something as indigestible. They may have an indigestible anger with someone or over something, so their intestines swell once the argument has been resolved or the situation has been resolved, so the morsel can come out. And so tissues respond with also a functional loss. For example, in a sound conflict, a person may experience reduced hearing, as though they do not want to hear something now. How many kids get blocked ears after hearing an argument? Or a visual conflict. There may be changes in vision, as if the biology is responding to something the person did not want to see or was frightened to see. How many children are wearing glasses these days? Maybe their little bodies or their senses are not ready to see all the things they're exposed to these days on the screens and social media. The body's response always follows the meaning of the conflict. Now, outwardly, the person may not even notice very much yet. Or if they do notice something in the conflict active phase, they often do not interpret it correctly. Because what's happening internally is not always dramatic at first. The real drama, the pain, the swelling, in many cases, begins once the conflict is resolved. That is when the person moves into the second phase, the healing phase, the nighttime phase, also called vagatonia. This is where the body finally has permission to repair, to restore, to replenish and recover. And this is also where so many symptoms appear that people have been taught to fear. This is known as the sick phase. This is where you see the swelling, inflammation, pain, fatigue, fever, discharge, redness, fluid retention, coughing, night sweats, digestive upsets, skin eruptions, tenderness, or exhaustion. And because people feel these symptoms so strongly, they often assume something has suddenly gone very wrong. In many cases, this is actually the body working through that repair phase. This is why understanding the timeline matters so much. Without the timeline, healing can be mistaken for danger. Let me say that again, because it's such an important point. Without understanding the two-phase process, healing can be mistaken for danger. A person may have resolved something huge in their life. The conflict is over. The threat is gone. The burden has lifted. Now the body begins repairing. And suddenly symptoms appear. They get scared. They think, why am I sick now? If things are finally better. From this perspective, that often makes complete sense. They feel worse because the body has shifted into healing. Think about someone who has been in a long season of stress in a relationship. They're walking on eggshells. They're tense every day. They cannot relax. Their system is in constant conflict activity. Finally, something resolves. They begin talking to each other again. They begin relaxing around each other. The situation calms and the tension lifts. And then all of a sudden, they get exhausted. They get a headache. They begin to sleep more. They feel a little inflamed. They may get some pain or fever. So in our conventional way of thinking, we would say that makes no sense. But according to GHK, it makes perfect sense. The body is no longer in the stress phase. It is now repairing. Or think of a child who has experienced a separation conflict. He doesn't want to go to school, but the mother has insisted. During the conflict active phase, while it's away from the mother, The subtle changes that nobody really notices happens. Once the child reconnects, once the separation is resolved, the healing phase may begin. And then the skin flares up. The symptoms become more visible. Again, this can be frightening if you don't understand the timeline. This is why we say over and over that fear makes everything harder. Because if a person enters the healing phase and becomes terrified of the symptoms, the fear in itself can create new conflicts. And then instead of allowing the healing process to complete, the person gets pulled back into stress, panic, confusion. This is where we end up going to the doctors, and then there's more fear. That is why knowledge matters so much. When we understand that symptoms come in those phases, that the pain, swelling, and fatigue are part of the repair, we can stop reacting. We become more observant, more respectful of the process. And it doesn't mean that every symptom feels easy. It doesn't mean healing is always comfortable. Sometimes healing is intense, sometimes it's messy. Sometimes the body is working very hard. But there is a huge difference between going through something intense with the understanding and going through it in total fear. It's just going to exacerbate it even more. The second biological law also helps to explain why some people say, I was fine during the stress and only got sick once it was over. And many people have had that experience, and they keep going through a difficult season, pushing, coping, surviving. And then the moment the crisis passes, they collapse into symptoms. They get a cold, they get the pain, they get exhausted, inflamed. The body, that is the biology shifting from conflict activity into healing. This is why on vacations, weekends, holidays, or finally feeling safe can sometimes be the moment when all those symptoms show up. The person thinks, oh, I finally slowed down and now I'm sick. But again, from this perspective, the slowing down, moving out of the stress phase is what allows the healing phase to begin. This understanding is so powerful because it stops us seeing the body as inconsistent or broken. It shows us that the body follows a rhythm. This is also one of the reasons we created the 5 biological laws, the introduction course on www.energyghk.com, because so many people need a gentle and grounded place to begin understanding these laws. When you first hear this, it can feel like a completely different language. Once the pieces begin to come together, it brings so much clarity. For those of you who want to go much deeper, our signature course, Living in Biological Harmony, takes this into everyday life, relationships, motherhood, symptom patterns, conflicts, constellations, and healing, and how to actually live with this understanding in a more practical way. Because for me, this is not only about learning theory. It's about changing the way we meet the body. It's about becoming less afraid. It's about noticing patterns. It's about understanding why things happen when they do. And it's about giving people their power back through understanding. So when we first put the second and the first biological laws together, we begin to see the whole beginning of the story. The conflict shock, the unexpected event that catches the person off guard and activates the biological response. So as you reflect on this episode, I want to leave you with a few gentle questions. What was happening in your life before a symptom began? Was there an unexpected shock, a conflict, or something deeply distressing that caught you off guard? And if you're in symptoms now, could it be possible that your body is not only breaking down, but perhaps working through a phase you have not understood yet? Just begin to notice the timeline. Begin to look back with curiosity. Begin to ask what came first. And that alone can open so much. Thank you for being here with me today. It's not the absence of the conflict, but the ability to stop fearing the body and begin listening to it. Thank you for being here with me today.